Instagram. And it's been great, but all of a sudden there became something that some of the people were having difficulty come on live. So we switched over so that we could do it on Facebook. And the only thing is there is a slight delay, but it all works out. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad to see you guys. Don't worry if you're not here live. I will be recording it, and my guy Thomas is going to put on every social media platform that you use. Now, before I bring in Ashton, I just want to tell you a bit about her. And you know how much I love first, and this is total first. Ashton Rodenhiser is a professional live illustrator and sketchnoting educator. We've never had that. That's awesome. She believes, just like everybody can dance, I say everybody can dance and sing. She believes everyone can draw and that it can be your best thinking tool. I believe that. Wait, you've drawn over 3,000 live presentations in the last 10 years? Oh my gosh. Ashton, welcome. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I first have to get into forget everything else.
Okay.
Were you just in the middle of a presentation one day and all of a sudden said, wait a minute, I have a different way of expressing it? Like, how did this all come about?
Yeah, so I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I think secretly I wanted to be an artist, but I just didn't think it was in the cards. Like there's just too much negativity around like a starving artist, you're not going to make any money, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. So I didn't even consider it. So when everybody was deciding what big fancy careers they were going to have in high school, I just wanted to be a mom. That's what I wanted to do. Just want to be a mom. So I decided to take early childhood education.
Oh,
Because I figured it was like a pretty transferable skill, I'll look after other people's kids and then I can have my own kids and like maybe I'll know how to like raise them well, which is such a joke. I was like, after I had my second kid, I was like, you take that diploma and you throw it out the window. But I ended up
exactly.
getting I ended up getting a job out of community college at a nonprofit family center. And while I was there for 4 years, and the last few years I was there, I transitioned from working with the kids to working with the adults and working with the parents there as a facilitator. And I found out how much I loved facilitation, right?
Hmm.
It's better than teaching, in my opinion, because you don't have to know anything. You're not standing at the front of the room with all this knowledge and trying to impart and educate someone on all that information that's in your head, right? Facilitation is really about bringing people together in a safe space to be able to explore their own ideas and their own thoughts and connect with other people
Hmm.
and how they're feeling about things. And facilitators are really good at asking the right questions and helping people feel connected and feel seen and heard. After I did that for a little while, was facilitating some sessions. Honestly, it was very random. Someone just said, "Hey, have you heard of this thing called graphic facilitation? There's like a 1 day course. It's like intro." And I was like, "I don't even know what this is, but I've always been very creative and I like dabbling with different things. And maybe this is something I would like. I have no idea." And I took that 1 day course and I was like, "This is it. This is life now." Like I was totally hooked. I was totally hooked on how using my skills as a facilitator, and I could listen and hear and think and in groups of people. Now I can do that and not just feedback in words, but now I can feedback in pictures. And I started to draw in some groups I was facilitating at the time and was experiencing like how powerful it was for myself and for the people in the room. So yeah, so I kind of decided to leave facilitation by the wayside and go all in because I wanted to learn how to do this really well. Um, but I had to kind of start from scratch. Like I didn't know how to draw. Like I was very creative, but I didn't know how to draw. So I had to like really learn over those first few years, and here we are today. Yeah.
Okay. I have so many questions for what you said, but number one, I just want you to know,
Okay.
by the way, and Ashton she has no clue about my background. My son is a freshman at Tyler Art Institute.
There you go.
But
Well, I hope the narrative is changing, and that's why I love
yeah,
talking about being a creative entrepreneur, a creative in business, a
yeah,
creative making
yeah.
money. I think it's so important. We need to be encouraging younger people like your son to go and pursue those things, right? And believe that, he doesn't have to have it all figured out right now,
No,
but
no.
there will be some creative endeavor he'll come across that he can, be creative and make a good living. Like that is totally possible, right?
Abs-
And
And yeah, and he's lucky. He's at a big university, so they
yeah,
can take courses not just in art,
yeah.
like you can dabble.
Business or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very helpful. That's awesome. I'm happy for him. I wish I would have had the bravery that he had to go and do that. So that's
I'll
awesome.
tell you the thing that I really like of all the skills, but because again, you were saying you had to learn to draw. I do draw all the time, but I just call it my brain drain because they're like stick figures. You know what I mean? That's how I think, but I'm not a good drawer.
Right.
Um, when they're critiquing each other's artwork, they have to sign a contract in most of the classes of how you support one another, lift one another up in a way that you're being honest so they can improve. And I think that's an awesome skill that so many people should learn and so many leaders should learn. And that it's a safe space, but you're learning not only to take constructive criticism because they just want you to get better,
Yeah.
but also how to give that.
Yeah. I love that. And whoever decided that in the university, very smart, because I think we need to decide how we give and provide feedback. So when I teach workshops and stuff, I tell people straight up, I'm not going to critique anything. If you want me to critique something, you tell me. But like today, because it's like a lot of beginners doing this, I'm like,
Mhm.
today I'm your cheerleader. I'm going to tell you everything's great. And I'm going to be honest about it. I'm not just going to be like, oh, it's amazing. Like, I'm going to celebrate with you today and I'm going to support you in developing this, but I'm not going to
Mm.
like critique you. If you want me to give you harsh feedback, I can. It's not usually my vibe, but if you want me to really get in the weeds with you, but when you're in that learning stage, like that's not the most valuable thing is to be critiqued to death and then you feel like you can't do it and then you give up. So,
You know, I didn't realize this till you were talking, but one of the journals I created, it was supposed to be, it's back there called um, Reset to Recess for Reset, and it's for 8 to 12-year-olds. And a place in it, there's a place for them to have their thoughts, but instead they can draw in it, whatever comes to mind. Well, I sent that journal to a lot of my friends who have kids or grandparents, and it didn't even make it to the kids
right.
because they like that. So now I'm going to create another journal where there's a space because the adults want to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They called it doodling, but a lot of times people, and I'm sure you understand, can't express it in words, but they were drawing it.
Yeah.
And I never thought to do that for my adult books. The kids, I knew.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great idea. I think like I actually really love the word doodling because doodling can be a really beautiful stepping stone to drawing because most people can get behind doodling. They're like, oh yeah, I can doodle, but a lot of people be like, no, I can't draw.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
doodling is like very low, non-threatening. It's low barrier to entry. You don't feel like it's precious. You can throw it away, and what I like to do is like use doodling as like I said, the stepping stone to drawing. How can
Mm.
you make those doodles more purposeful to what it is you're thinking about, learning about, trying to understand? And so I love thinking about and teaching around drawing, or more commonly known as like sketchnoting, in a way to help us process information, to understand information, to maybe stay more focused when you're listening to something. So I like it from that perspective and breaking down complexity and stuff like that.
So I teach a bunch of high school kids, and they're high risk high school kids. And the whole time in the one class I teach that I'm talking, they're sitting there just drawing.
Right.
And one of the counselors came in and she said, they should be paying attention. I'm like, they are paying attention.
Exactly.
And it's not as if he was drawing what I was talking about, but I could see he was focusing in. And I don't know if I was going to ask you, was he processing what I said, or is that just relaxing him, or you don't know?
Well, I'm not the best with brain science stuff. I kind of like lead that to the experts, but the one that I always mention that I do know is doodling can help you remember up to 29% more information.
Ah,
So it actually is the
ah,
opposite that people think. People think, oh, it's a distraction, it's this or that, it's not good, blah, blah, blah. It's actually doing the opposite. Chances are, I'm assuming this kid was, very, maybe he needs to move,
yeah.
right? Maybe he learns best when he's moving. You can't move when you're sitting in the seat. So what can you do? You can move your hand, right?
Ah,
And the doodling doesn't have to like mean anything to still get benefit from it. The way
yeah.
that I like to teach is like make those doodles like more meaningful. But even if you don't even want to go that far into it, just
Mm,
doodling can help you stay focused. And potentially remember up to 29% more information, right? So
yeah.
um, like, yeah, there is science that backs that up. And it is, I think people are hopefully starting to understand that if it's getting
Mm,
out there a little bit more. And there are some, like, even some recent research studies around, people typing notes versus writing notes and students drawing notes versus just writing words and stuff. And it always sides with the writing, the
yeah.
drawing, right?
Absolutely. If you saw, like, so you're sitting here and I'm writing down things that I'm going to post with it right afterwards. So I take notes, but it looks like a crazy person because there's notes and then there's drawings next to it,
No,
like
that's perfect.
weird,
And you should
weird
post a
things.
picture of your doodles. Like when you're doing your notes, you should post the picture.
Nobody would understand it.
Well, so I have this giant piece of paper. I'll show you. I have this giant piece of paper and I just have it here. And when it gets filled up, I just replace it with a new one. So this is like I was on a call last night and like there's just some like little drawings. They were saying the guy that was interviewing me, he said, we think with our eyes. And I was like, ooh, I really like that. So I made sure I captured that. And then you just said brain drain. So I wrote that. It's
Yeah.
mostly like little speech bubbles, but I can't remember what he was saying last night, but he was like going over, leaping over the brick wall or something. So I told him I was drawing it. I can't remember. And then he mentioned about apparently there's this psychic medium, John Edward. So I wrote that down so I would look it up. And apparently that's how if you believe that thing, like that's how people come to him, like spirits come to him in pictures.
Ah,
And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So
that's awesome.
just from a picture perspective, I was like, oh, I want to research that and look into that because that's no one's ever told me or I've never heard of that before. That's one way that people like talk to spirits. Anyways, we're getting a little off track for that topic,
No, it's
but
not. That's what it's all
yeah.
about.
So I think, yeah, so like I'm always doodling something, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to keep this. Like, I might go, oh, I might Google John Edward and then trash
Yeah.
this tomorrow or whatever, but it doesn't have to be precious. And like, I think there's many different ways that you can use like visual tools to help you with something. Like, I heard one time there was this guy, and I really wish I remember where it was from. It was a couple years ago, but he would just keep a pack of sticky notes with him and a pen. And when someone would say like a book recommendation or something like that, John Edward, he'd write it on a sticky note and stick it in his bag. And at the end of the week, he'd dump out his bag and look at all the sticky notes. And he's like, am I going to look up this book? Nah, I'm going to trash it. Right. So he would
Ah,
actually like get rid of a whole bunch of the sticky notes and just keep the ones that he was actually going to take action on. Right. So like, I thought that was kind of a cool idea too, because like doodling and doing those kinds of things, it's like, they're not precious. They maybe helped you in the moment, but like doesn't mean that you have to
hmm,
keep them forever. Where when we start talking about drawing and art, then there's like this, we start to kind of have this separation because then people get into the camp of, oh, well, I can't draw. And I'm like, but you can though. If you can
yeah,
doodle, you can draw,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, if like the whole like just identity of being a creative person is just like that could be a whole other like hour-long conversation, just like how people tend to self-identify as not being a creative person. So they look at someone like me and they're like, well, you're creative, so of
Yeah,
course you
yeah,
can do it.
absolutely.
And for the first few years as like professional trying to like get work and doing this work, and getting clients and stuff, I didn't tell anybody I had no art background. I was like, I'm gonna keep that because then they won't take me seriously. But now, as I'm teaching more people how to do this, I tell people all the time, and I show them like my early works from 10 years ago, and I say, look how awful this was, right? Look how
Yeah.
like is bad compared to what I can do today. And that's just 10 years. That's just doing the work and being in it for 10
Yeah.
years. But and I'm like, I didn't learn how to draw, or I didn't know how to draw starting. See, look how bad this drawing is. Like, and you can do it too, right? Like wasn't I wasn't necessarily a big drawer as a kid. And I think people make these assumptions when they hear things about me. Um, and things like that. So yeah.
Everyone does. You're right. And I'm so glad you
Mhm.
said that because there was a friend of mine who wanted to take up tap dancing, and I guess she's 70.
Oh, nice.
And she's like, "You think I'm gonna have trouble?" I go, "Well, I wouldn't go into an advanced class,
Yeah.
but if you have a desire to learn to tap dance." And she's like, "Yeah, but I've never," it's not like she dance, it's not like she's someone that gets on the dance, but and guess what? She's loving it.
Oh, I love that. That's
She's loving,
awesome.
yeah, and I say the same thing. Everyone can dance to some level. Everyone can dance. All right, I wanna back up
Sure.
because I wanna make sure we get this in, and I wanna know why you picked it. So, when I asked Ashton what was the one statement she wanted to get out to the world, she said, "Even if it doesn't make sense, your intuition is guiding you in the right direction." Tell us more why you picked that one.
I'm going to use your tap dance example, right? Why did she want to tap? Who knows? Why did she want to tap? She wasn't a dancer, right? She listened
Mm-mm.
to her intuition and she did it and she's loving it. But if she would
Loving
have
it.
listened to that voice, and been like, well, I'm not a dancer though. I'm 70 and I've never danced. Who am I to think that I could do this? But luckily, she had your support and listened to her intuition and being like, yeah, well, maybe I could do it. Right. And then you do it and you're like, oh my gosh. Like, I think there's always a reason why you get those inklings. Like, I don't know. Like, the honestly, decisions I make day to day, I have no idea why I'm making them. I'm like, this seems like the right thing to do. Who knows? Like, it's like those times where you randomly think of someone you haven't talked to in a year and you just have this draw to email them. You're like, I should email this person right now. But your brain would go, well, that's ridiculous. You haven't talked to them in a year. What would you say?
Mm,
Like, this literally happened to me one time. That's why you said as an example. That happened. I emailed, I'm like, hey, how are you? I was just thinking about you. Like, that's all I sent.
yeah,
And what did they sent an email right back and said, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you too.
yeah, yeah.
Right. But if I wouldn't have listened to my intuition there and that little voice saying like, you should email this person, like, I find that's how beautiful things emerge and relationships are built and you experience interesting things because of this draw. Like, why do we want to travel to a certain place? Like if you ask someone like where do you want to travel to in the world? Like if, someone gave you a ticket, where would you go? People always pick a place. But is there a reason why you want it? Who knows why you want to actually, like maybe it was a movie you saw in a long time, like maybe there's a little reason, but there is some pull to that place in the world. And can we identify why that is? It's like, I don't know, just because I want to go there. Like it looks cool. I The culture looks interesting to me. I don't know. Like, do we need to have a reason? Do we need to like explain everything away of like why we want to do something or why we made a decision?
Mm,
But it's like trying to quiet that logical mind a little bit and lean in on those little like nudges that you hear. And the important thing is taking action on it, right?
yes,
Not
yes.
going, oh well, I'm not going to email the person. That seems ridiculous. Like, you know,
I think that sometimes, well, most times, if you pause and don't act on it, you don't do it. So when you're thinking about it, like, that's when you said, take inspired action as it comes, don't delay. You you may go, "Oh yeah, I forgot all about that."
yeah,
So when it's strong, that's why when people say, "I was thinking of going outside and taking a walk with my dog," but then I'm like, "Oh, I got too much work." And then by the time they're not done, yeah, you just get up and go now, like when you're
yeah,
thinking about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I definitely had that issue of like just like, well, I just gotta get my work done. I only have my kids are only in school for so long. I gotta get my stuff done. But I'd feel this draw to be out to like if my my body's like, go outside, go. And I'm like, okay, then I guess I'm gonna go outside right now, like drop everything and go outside right now. And it seems weird, but it's like your body's also telling you things in that,
Yeah.
right? It's like go and get fresh air, go and get a glass of water or whatever it is. Like, yeah, I think I mentioned the intuition because I just feel like it's been such a huge contributing factor to where I am today. You know, creating this interesting business, getting to meet interesting people like you. A lot of it is
Yeah.
based on, I was like, last year I was like, I should be more visible. I wonder what that would look like. I have no idea. Let's talk to people who do podcasts. Okay, then all right, let's do that. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know what's going to happen, but you just like, there is this kind of like blind trust in the process too.
Yeah.
And just trust that things are like, you're headed in that direction for a reason. Things are going to
Yes.
work
Yes.
out. Yeah.
It's just like you were talking about when you started drawing 10 years ago and what it looks like now. There's
Yeah.
no way you can prepare and do when I was hosting podcasts 10 years ago. It's a lot
Yeah.
different than now, but I'm not going to wait. You
Yeah.
got to just go all in.
Yeah.
And so I do like your third tip, which is
Oh gosh.
become rejection proof to
Oh
allow your
yeah.
intuition to speak more clearly
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Oh, oh my gosh. I think there's a couple different ways to do it. I was really struggling years ago when I was like trying to build this business because I was just getting no's constantly. I was constantly getting no's. And I think at some point I realized how much those no's were important in the process. Now I feel like I'm on the other side of all that. Like I had to get a lot of no's to harden myself so that when people say no, I'm like, that's too bad. Like we would have had a good time.
It-
I could have helped you. Like your people at that event would have been like wowed. They would have been inspired. They would have actually remembered stuff. All that money you spent on those speakers wouldn't have been wasted because people actually remember things when they leave the conference. Like I think by getting rejected so much, it's like one one little jelly bean in the rejection um, jar. I'm just making this analogy up right now. One jelly
I'm
bean
good
in
with
the
this.
rejection jar. There's an equally a jelly bean that goes in that's equal to the belief in what you're doing, right? So I felt like every rejection I got made me stronger in the belief that what I was like
Mm,
that I was doing what I was doing was valuable in the world. So now when I get a rejection, like the jelly bar, the jars are so full that it's like I have a lot of confidence in what it is that I'm doing because you know that for every rejection, let's say every 10 rejections, you get a yes. So you
yeah.
need those rejections to get the yeses, and then you show up and you do a good job and you get feedback and people are happy and inspired and all the good things, then it just like adds more jelly beans to the confidence jar, right? It's really hard to have confidence in those beginnings. And that's why it's important
Yeah.
to also listen to intuition because you don't know which direction you're supposed to head in, right? So, like, I'm really glad that I let the rejection jelly bean jar fill up really full because my confidence jar is equal full and the direction it like doesn't matter, so it
Yeah.
just rolls off of you a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 8 years ago Ashton would have a really hard time believing that to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I want you to dive in a little bit more and explain because what you were saying, oh, everyone at the conference will remember the speakers more. Tell the people listening or the ones watching what that means. Like, give us an example of what you would be doing.
Yeah. So, okay. So, because we're using conferences as an example, and I do a lot of conferences, imagine there's 8 presenters over the course of the day, either in person or virtually.
Okay.
As they're talking, I'm either in person or virtual with them. As they're talking, I'm drawing pictures. Oh, they said this. Okay, I'm going to draw this. They said those words. Okay, I'm going to say these words, creating like this visual representation of what was just said in real time. The importance of it, there is an important part of it being real time because they're hearing the information, you're seeing it drawn out in pictures, right? It's like this,
Mhm.
the dual learning, right? And if you add in an emotional aspect to that, that's triple it, right? So they might tell a story. I'm listening to the story. I draw a picture that represents the story and a few like the key whatevers that came from that story. And, and then that presentation is done. Then we do the next presentation, then the next one. And then maybe at the end of that conference, you got 8 visuals that represented every
Ah,
single presentation. I like to do them individual because I just like to collect. I like to do so much. Like you could sometimes, if I'm doing like a strategic visioning session for an organization, maybe it's only one, right? Because there's a lot of conversation, right? So I want to capture the meat of the conversation. I need to capture like every detail of the conversation, right? So I'm gonna have to like wait and listen for a half an hour before people start to come to some conclusions. And then you're drawing like and writing frantically, and then be like, is this what you said? Is this what you said? Is this what you meant? Right.
oh,
So it can be a little in facilitated sessions, it can be a little bit more interactive. And conferences, I'm a little bit more of like a fly on the wall, not as
mhm.
engaged like the presenter or anything. Um, yeah, and then like at the end of that event or that session, then everyone gets a picture of the graphic, either digital. If I was digital, they get it right away, like immediately. Or if I'm in person, when I'm in person, I do it on paper usually, not
Yeah,
always,
yeah.
but usually. So it's like giant, like 4 feet wide, 8, 10, 12, 16 feet long or longer, like kind of depends, right? And so they're like, see their words like big and large right in front of them. And then everybody gets a copy of it. And then my hope is that I try to educate my clients on like how to use the graphics after the event, put it on your website, email it out to your participants, like put it in the lunchroom, like whatever it is to help continue that conversation. So
That is way cool. And I've spoken at a lot of conferences and I would love that. That would be
yeah,
so,
next time you say, well, did you hire a live illustrator? And they'll be like, what's that? Be like, well, here's my friend Ashton. It's fun, and I get to learn about so many different things, like, because I'm not I would do a lot in tech, but I was just talking earlier before I hopped on this call. I talked to someone about a project they're working on, and it's in a whole bunch of provinces in the country, and they're interviewing and collecting stories from their communities, and then they're going to give me the stories and create visual from each community, of
mm,
all these like community stories. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll end up working with these people, but it sound like that would be a really cool project. I get to like learn and hear all these like interesting stories from all these communities, um, in some of these different provinces. So like you never really know kind of where what you're going to be listening in on and what you're going to be
yeah.
learning in the process. So yeah, I get to learn about some. I could do a lot in like cybersecurity. So I'm like terribly like paranoid about everything now. I like know too much. But like they're like my favorite client. Like they're the best. Like they're
Why?
amazing.
Why are they the
Oh
best?
well, I think because they're just so nice to me. Like they're just like you're amazing. Like everything I do for them, they're just like so supportive and lovely and helpful and easygoing. Um, I kind of have this like rule that I've been telling people that I only work with fun people. So I'm like, if you're fun, then we'll have a good time. But if you're not fun, then and then usually clients end up being like, well, I think we're fun. I think we're fun.
We don't
So
know. We could be stick in the mud, but we don't.
yeah. So, because like I like it when people give me creative control, and that's part of it. It has to be a
Yeah.
relationship. And if like I had someone last year like don't use too much blue, and I'm like, oh, now I'm thinking about how much blue I'm using, and like that's taking up precious real estate in my brain when I'm trying to listen to everything and synthesize everything
Yeah.
that I'm hearing, and I can't be thinking about how much blue I'm using. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
if you're gonna tell me how much blue to use, probably not going to be the right fit. Um, I'll fix things and do little edits if I need to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I appreciate when people give me a lot of creative control and freedom.
I'm thinking this, I get the participants really benefit from it. And now not only did they get to listen to it, but now they're going to get to see it. But as a speaker, that would be really cool
Yeah.
for you to do that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. The speakers have like always been more than appreciative. Like, yeah, and some speakers I end up kind of there's a few people that I've recorded a couple times over the years. And there's this one guy in particular, he actually uses it as a feedback, like a sounding board. And he'll send
Oh,
me a note. And if he's confused or wants to clarify, because he views it as, did I get my point across? So he'll see what I looked at and he says like a reflection. He's like, okay, I know what I said, or I know what I thought I said. Okay, what did she capture? Did she capture my main point? Okay, she captured that, but she didn't, include my other point. Interesting. Okay,
mm,
and then he'll reach out, be like, hey, I noticed you didn't capture this. Is there a reason? I'm like, well, I remember hearing that, and be like, oh, did I not emphasize that enough? Right. So, it's fun when I can now over the time have relationships with other like speakers and stuff as well to use it in different ways, not just from like a marketing perspective, but
yeah,
like,
yeah,
like I like working with people who truly appreciate and care about people learning something or engaging with something or feeling heard and seen.
yeah,
Right? You
yeah,
show up differently if you know people actually care about your learning. Whereas, like, there's going to be a lot of conferences out there, they just care about filling seats. They don't care that you leave learning anything.
yeah, yeah.
They just think you're going to maybe figure that out, how to learn something, but they're not aiding you and helping you learn something. Right.
Mm.
So by me being there and being able to support, I think that's really beneficial because then people get these representations. And because most people do say that they do love to learn visually, it speaks to most people, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot believe, I'm like, wait a minute, we can't be out of time, but I want to
Oh
see,
my
I actually
gosh.
pulled some things off the wall, Ashton.
Did. Yeah, I've got this one is Adam Grant. He's a pretty big wig, so that's why he's up there behind me. But we can
That's his
see
fireside chat.
there was a fireside chat at an event. But if you know Adam Grant,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think this is a cybersecurity event. I think I like this one. I printed it because there's a little Gandalf the Grey there. I can't remember, what did they say? You shall pass. Yeah, it was like a whole thing on there. But yeah, I was talking about like leadership and using your voice and
That is
diversity, inclusion, and
awesome.
belonging and stuff in the cybersecurity space. Um,
That's awesome.
Most of these are techie, but that's fine. This one was
That's all
making
right.
it.
We get the idea.
Yeah, so then this was another one. I just liked the color palette. This one ended up being a fun color palette. So yeah, and then the fireside chat there, which is kind of fun as well. But yeah, and like no two are ever the same. They're all different because
Yeah.
and like I never know what people are going to say. Like I don't know what they're going to say before they say it. All I know is the title of their talk or the presentation or
Yeah, I was thinking that because that's way more pressure. I'm thinking that, all right, someone asked me, I'm going to draw this, take my time, it'll be done in a month, whatever. You can't miss it. You have to be on point and focused.
yeah. I always feel bad for people at the end of the event who try to like come up and talk to me because my brain is mush, man. Like you can't fit any more in there, and you just like go like lay down and take the next day off or something. It's pretty hard on the head because you can't let your mind wander, like not even for a second. So
No.
the focus is pretty darn intense for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what's the most you've done in a day? Because you're at a conference, there could be so many speakers.
Honestly, I think that I remember thinking this was a bad idea after I did it. I did a 16-hour event one time.
Oh,
I know. It was a lot. It was a lot. Yeah, it was an overseas thing. I had to wake up at like 4 in the morning. It was really intense. That was a bad decision. But usually, if it's a day, it's like, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10's pushing it. 10's a lot. 8 is like good. By the time 6 or 7 roll around, I'm like, okay, I'm getting tired now. Like, I'm getting pretty beat. The first one, okay, I'm getting into my groove. And then like 2 to 6, I'm like, okay, I'm great. And then at 6, I'm like, I'm starting to get a little tired. But
yeah, yeah.
a common number is around 8 for like a standard 8-hour day because you've got not every some talks are half an hour, some are a panel might be an hour, and then we got hopefully a lunch break in there and all that stuff. So yeah, it kind of depends, but yeah, the higher end is like 12 in an 8-hour day. That's a lot. That's a lot.
It's not even that, like, I'm thinking my brain, that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Like, to
Yes,
not.
and yes, you know, if anyone's from Guinness World Records out there, I'd love to see a category for fastest handwriting, because I would really love to apply to see if I had like, I probably wouldn't get it, but fastest handwriting, because you do have to draw ridiculously fast.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, all right, I know we got to go. I know we got to go, but this is like so fascinating to me. Do you also teach others to do this, or full time? This is what you do?
Yeah, so 2024, I'm really focused on getting this skill set in the hands of other people. So great segue question. Great
Oh, I
question.
did not know
You
that.
didn't even know that. Yeah.
My
So
intuition told me.
yeah, so it's you know, I like I said, I wasn't a drawer when I started doing this. I think people can do this for themselves, for their own learning, for their own engagement. Whether you are like a professional in a place where you're trying to like understand things or take meeting notes, or you're a 10-year-old student trying to learn how to do note taking. Yeah, so I spent a year and a half writing a book, and I
Oh,
published it last year. And I just happen to have a
oh,
copy right in front of me. The Beginner's Guide to Sketchnoting. Focus better, learn faster,
I
remember longer
love
by following
that.
leads. And it's got lots of drawings in it. It's mostly drawings, of course.
Yeah.
And it's got little cheat sheets and stuff. And so it walks. My goal with writing this book was like, I want people by the end of the book, and it's not very long. I want people by the end of the book to know they can do it. Like have all the skill set that
Mm,
they know they can do it. Because the worst thing is you get a book and it's like all theory. And I'm like, there's like no theory. If you want to like look up brain science, like I have this little brain science guy, he just like shows up throughout the book and he's like smiling and tells you a fact. But there's no like, it's not front loaded with a bunch of stuff. It gets right into it.
mm.
And that was really important to me in the process of putting it together, to really support people in that they can do it too. So it's been really fun sharing the book and teaching people. And I spent about the last half of last year just kind of like figuring out putting all of this together. And yeah, so it's my primary focus going into 2024. So I'm excited to see what this year is going to bring for that.
That is exciting. Now, where can I get the book?
Amazon and all those places.
Okay, cool.
Sketchnote.school. Sketchnote, word together, .school is like I have newsletter.
Is that where
There's
they can find you too if they wanted to hire you?
Yeah, I have another website, of course, because you have to have multiple. Like, why did I do this to myself? I don't know. But Mind's Eye Creative is like my business work, like
Mm,
for like my portfolio, but you can contact me through sketchnote.school as well. But yeah, so I have a free newsletter. I have a community that has like a free and a paid part, but the free spot has I've got 400 people in there from all around the world, sketchnoting, newbies, advanced, intermediate, like everybody in between. A lot like, you know, school teachers to like tech
yeah.
professionals to like anybody, like lots of different people in there. So if you want to be like inspired. And I hosted a World Sketchnote Day, and the recordings from that event are in that community. And I had 800 people from 64 countries join us for World Sketchnote Day, which was on January 11th, which was
Wow.
very exciting. Yeah. So the recordings from that, and in the recording, I do a little Sketchnote 101. It's like a 35-minute video, walking through a lot of the basics that you find in the book. So yeah, so that's probably a good place for people to get started. And that's all. That's in like the free aspect of Sketchnote School community. So
I think it's awesome. All
yeah.
right. Ashton, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah.
Hey, I got something to say. I loved it. The first, and it's a great first. And everyone, don't worry if you miss the beginning. It's okay. After we're done, it's going to be recorded. And not only will it be on Facebook, but it'll be on every social media platform. So you can watch it wherever you'd like. And Ashton and I would really appreciate you sharing it. And even if you know one person that would really enjoy it, pass it along. And you know what I'm going to say? Until next time, thank you, Ashton, and toodles.
Thank you so much for having me.